klal b'Torah. What does it mean klal gadol? What is it?
That encompasses the whole Torah.
So it's gadol because it encompasses the whole Torah. Here.
It's Torah in essence.
Okay, I think we are good to go. We'll make sure that should have tested the microphone first, but we'll test it now. Testing, 1, 2, 3. Gewaltig. Okay. Sagt der Heilige Mishnah. Ein misnadvin loig shnayim v'chamisha. So Rashi tells us, nesachim. Normally, where do you find nesachim? You find nesachim accompanying the carbon through the minchas nesachim. So the question is, could you decide to be menadev just wine to pour on the mizbeach by itself? So state in the Mishnah you could, but only in specific quantities. Ein misnadvin loig shnayim v'chamisha. 2 loig, 5 loig you can't. However, al misnadvin. I'm sorry?
1 loig also not.
1 loig also not. That's right. Al misnadvin shloisha v'arba v'shisha. And umishisha ulamayla. The numbers are 3, 4, and 6, and anything above 6. Let's see Rashi. Ein misnadvin loig yayin. Yayin leniskoi. Shaloi matzinu minchas nesachim shaloig v'loi shnayim v'loi chamisha. So here Rashi is telling us a very important klal. Yes, we find something called nesachim, and therefore you could even on your own give nesachim of yayin by itself. But that's only if it follows the template that was already set up in the Torah. So the Torah has nesachim with 6 loig, the Torah has nesachim with 4 loig, and the Torah has nesachim with 3 loig. And Rashi tells us how you have it. Av misnadvin shloisha. Why? The chazul lekeves. Because we know chatzi ahin lapar, ushlishis ahin la'ayil, urvi'is ahin lakeves yoyin. Ahin is 12 loig, so a chatzi hin is 6 loig, which is lapar, and a shlish ahin is 4 loigin, which is for an ayil, and a revi'is ahin is 3 loig, which would be for a keves. So those are templated. There's a template to bring those amounts of yain. Therefore, that's what you could be menadev. Av misnavid shloisha the chazul lekeves v'arba la'ayil the hishlisha shehin v'shisha the chazul lepar. And once you get over 6, then any variation is fine. You know why? Because you can combine 2 to get to that total. And Rashi gives an example. Umishisha l'mayla. For instance, Sheva. Sheva is chazu gimel minay lekeves v'dal l'ayil. So that follows the template. It's 4 and 3. Ushmoina chazu lishnei elim. Because 4 plus 4 is 8. Tisha 9 is 6 and 3. Chazu l'par v'keves. Asara chazu l'par v'ayil. Because a par is 6 and the ayil is 4. Yud Aleph chazu l'shnei elim v'keves. Here you have to combine 3 templates together. 2 times 4 is 8, 2 elim. And 8 plus 3 is 11. The keves v'kach lo'elim. So once you get over 6, any variation will be enough. Will follow a template. Clear to Gemara Ashayla. Ibaylahu. Yesh keval in nesachim. Is there a kvias to nesachim or ain't keval in nesachim? What does this mean? Zok Rashi. Yesh keval in nesachim. Now, before I learn this Rashi, we need to ask an often bombe kasha on our Mishnah. Now, normally we don't ask kashas by Daf Yomi from previous tsugyas because we forgot it already. But we've mamish learned yesterday, make me forget astira. So what did we learn yesterday? If someone says, I want to give a mincha chatzi ahin, chatzi sarin, what's halacha? He brings a full sarin. If he brings a sarin and a half, he brings 2 sarins. So what if someone says, I want to bring a loig? Why don't we automatically bump him up to 3? Why should it be any different than a mincha?
That's by mincha itself. But
so why the same way when you're mechayev yourself a mincha, you automatically bumped up to what the right shear is. So if you're mechayev yourself nesachim, why don't you automatically get bumped up to what the minimum shear is? So if you said 2, you get bumped up to 3. If you said 5, you should get bumped up to 6.
Chatzi sarin exists. by a Kohen Gadol. Here, there's no such thing as that. That's two lugim.
That's a very beautiful point that you're making, but that's a very beautiful point. And it's someone does say that, but let's first see what Tosfos says. So I'm looking at Tosfos on the lower end of the skinny lines. Ein misnadvin loik shnayim v'chamisha. Tamer frek Tosfos. Keheichad amrinon le'il davkov gimel amar aleph. Just yesterday, Gabi Menachos, Tim Amar Chatzi Sarin, Yavi Sarin Shalem, Sarin Umechza Yavi Shnayim. So Hachanami Nema Ki Amar Loigo Shnayim Yavi Shloisha, Shem Niskei Chevesh, Vichi Amar Chamisha Yavi Shisha, Shem Niskei Par, Zok Tosfos V'Shema Hachanami. Maybe ain't Hachanami. Hey Chadamar Harei Alai. If you said Harei Alai Nisachim, automatically you're bumped up. But maybe the case of our Mishnah is Aval Hacha Mayri ben Adava. He has either a loig or two of wine in front of him. And there the Shiloh was Budat Pichal. Ubegemara Yesh Kevel in the Sachim. The problem is that we're about to learn this Rashi. How does Rashi learn Yesh Kevel in the Sachim? Zokt Rashi. Now I'm going to leave Tosfos and I'm going to Rashi. Amar Harei Alai Kach V'Kach Lukum. So the way Rashi is learning, you don't have Tosfos teretz, but you have a Baruch teretz. That could be when you say Chatzi Sarin, Lamaisha, there is such a thing. But if you say two legs, there's no such thing at all. So maybe that's why it wouldn't work. So I actually heard over such a pshat of advertising discussion. Jews are teretz.
Yeah.
Now I have someone whose name I could say. I can say it in your name now. Gavalti. So Zokt Rashi, Amar Harei Alai Kach V'Kach Loigen, Mi HaVekva. Do we say that it has to be that all these loigin have to stick together? You can't separate them, and therefore the ein yochel akrivam el akol b'yachad. You have to bring them all together. Now, what are you going to do with two? You can't bring two. So what do you do? To have a karbi b'karben echad. Oy ein kva v'yochel akrivam u'madechazi b'apen efshayu. So we're going to see in a minute. The Gemara says, the case was if you donated 5. So if you donate 5, do you say ein keva? Not all 5 have to be brought together. Use 4 for one nesachim, which would be of the eye. I have one extra, so that will go to Moshe and Davis. Or do you say yesh keva, and they all have to be brought together? So therefore, I can't do anything with 5. I have to add 6 to it.
Yes, what?
Add another one. It should be 6. Then I can bring it as a niskei par. So Zok Gemara Heichadami. What exactly is the case? Could go into Isi Chamisha. You were machayiv yourself 5 loigin. If you held in kevel in the sachim, so then you could separate it. Moshech umakriv arba minayu the chaji la'ayil. Make a separate matanos nesachim of 4, and the extra one the idach have nedava. The other one will be nedava. What does nedava mean? Rashi says we have 2 options of what nedava could mean. Either nidvas tzibur, and what will you do to it? You'll liquidate the liquid wine. You'll sell it. The yimachar. The yiplu dam of l'shoifers, and the money will go into the shoifers, and it'll work for Keitz HaMizbeach. Whenever there's a slow day in the Beis HaMikdash, they would buy an oila with the money in that pushkin. Or maybe the actual wine you can use. Or yikahu atzmai. You know why? You know how much wine they use a day in the Beis HaMikdash? They bring a carbon tamid, shachar, shalbid, they buy with wine. So just add that to the wine. That use that as one of the loigin of wine that they need. Just take 2 loigin from the Beis HaMikdash and v'yikrav l'nischei tamid davinami l'tzibur. So is that the halacha? But when you amrit yesh kevel l'nisachim, then no, you can't just take 4 and get rid of the other one. Adim amali lahu, until you have a full shear like 6 loy karvi, you can't do anything. Zokt Rashi. You have to be menadiv a 6th one as well. And therefore, loy karvi, you won't be makavit now. You can't be makarv 4. You can't be makarv 4 by itself. So what is this? What is halach? That was the Gemara Shaila. Amar Abaye Toshma. Zokt Abaye. Maybe we could bring a raya from the following brisa. Now, Rashi tells us that the Mishnah in Yuma tells us that they had 13 pushkas. They had 13 pushkas in a pushka room in the base of Mikdash. They probably had coffee there too, and in the Mitzvah when the base of Mikdash is built, we'll also have our Beba Nes, and we'll also have Chaim Fier's pushka there too. But the base of Mikdash there was only here, right? But in the base of they only had 13 pushkas. Now Rashi goes through what they were. It's very interesting, so we might as well see Rashi inside. Shishal Nedava. Kabayud Gimel Shayfrei Shayu Mikdash. There were 13 pushkas. Koi. That's what this Bryce is talking about. The Yud Gimel Shayfrei Savu B'Shiva Man. Out of the 13, 7 of them Hayunoisnin Hanach Mois the Mefarish from Mesechas Yuma. In 7 of the Shayfreis, the Gemara in Yuma explains exactly what went into each of them, and the Besechas Shkolim, and Rashi shares with us what they were. Taklin Chadatim, the Shkolim for the new year. Someone who owes Shkolim could put him there. The Atikin, if he didn't give last year, he could put it over there. Kenan, there was on that pushka, there's a big sign. Maximum machzah shekel. This is our Shalai Abra. The rest of them it said Kolamar Belasaper Reis Meshubach. Right? So Vatikan, then Kenan, if someone wanted to bring a set of birds, he put money into that pushka. Goys le'oila, if someone wanted to bring a bird and oila, or Eitim, or Levina, Vizov lekapayers. So those are 7 pushkas. Now we're talking about what's relevant to our sugya of Shisha Mehem Hoyul Nedava. And 6 of them were extras that went to Nedava. Lita and Ben Mois HaHoychus L'Nidvas Tzibur. Any money that would go to Nidvas Tzibur, meaning to buy oilers for Ketzah Mizbeach, would be put into these 6 pushkas. Now you would think just put them all into one big pushka, they're all going to the same tzvek. Nevertheless, the origin of the money determined which pushka it went into. And I guess when we learn that Masechta, we'll get an insight into why it was done that way. So it says the 6 Shishal Nadav Amrinon Keneged me, Keneged Moiser Chatos. What's Moiser Chatos of Rashi? Someone who was Moiser Chatos. So he took $150 and he says, "This money I'm designating to buy a Karban Chatos with." Then he takes the $150. He goes to the market, and it turns out he could buy a beautiful, beautiful behemoth for $100. So now he has $50 extra that he designated to a Chatos. That's Moshe Chatos that he puts in the pushka, and they're going to buy an oil with it on a slow day, and they're going to be makiv the basar on the mizbeach, and the or will go to kayhan. The same thing with mitzayra. Umoiser Ashamois. If he had leftover money from Ashamois, again he put away too much money. Rashi says these Ashamois are referring to only 2 Ashamois: Asham Gezelois and Asham Elois. And then there was a separate pushka, Umoiser Asham Nazir. So Rashi asks, why can't you just lump all the Ashamas together? Zok Rashi, because Asham Elois and Gezelois was for a kapara. Asham Nazir was just to allow him to start drinking wine. Umoiser Asham Mitzayra. Mitzayra is also different, because Mitzayra, the Asham Mitzayra is to allow him to come into the Azara. Umoiser Kenan, if there was extra money from somebody who owed a pair of birds. Umoiser Minchas Chayte, or if there was extra from a Minchas Chayte. Break the Gemara, if you hold that in the case where you were makdish 5 legged of wine, you just bring 4 and the extra goes on the dava. Where are you going to put that money? Liskin shayfer achrina keneged moish in the sachem. Why isn't there a special pushka to put the extra from the sachem? Right? Zog the Gemara. The teretz is because hanach lenidvas tzibur azli. Where do all these shayfers go? They go to buy with it a behemoth that they'll bring as an oila. But if you had extra wine, you wouldn't even need to do that. You don't need to put it into a pushka because you could use it immediately. Hanishchichi, efsher the mitzdarfi, the maru the mar bahada adodi the curvy. There's so many carbonas every day that need the milchas tasachim, so that you don't need to put it into money and save it. You can, the moment you have an extra load, you can use it right away. You don't have to store it anywhere.
That's the second, but
I'm sorry?
That's according to the second Shas Rashi.
No, because could be even according to the first Rashi, you would never lazidize for money. You wouldn't have to. The Gemara is saying you shouldn't have to lazidize for money. You don't lazidize. Take it and purpose it right away into a carbon.
Who are you going to use it? Everybody came with their yain.
No, you could use it for the carbon tubet. You need mechaz zachem. So just they'll take one less from the warehouse and they'll use one. It's ready to go. It's right here. So vibalt, it's over l'soicher. It's right there. You don't have to put it in the storage. You can use it immediately. So that raya was neutralized. So Amarava Tashma, Rava brings a raya. The pasuk goes through all of the halachas of the nesachim, and then after there's a completely redundant pasuk. The completely redundant pasuk says the following. It says, "Kol ha'ezrach yaseh kacha es ela lahakav ishay reich nechayich l'Hashem." This is a redundant pasuk. Zokt the brayse malamed shemisnadvim nesachim. This is how you know. This is the makar. We talked about what the minimum nesachim are, what size are, but how do you know b'chlal there's such a thing that you can have an independent carbon of nesachim, and you learn it from Ezra malamed shemisnadvim nesachim. The kama, how much do you have to give? Shloishes lugan, 3 lugan. The uminayin shemratz al hoysef yosef. How do you know that you're allowed to give more than 3 lugan? Talmud Loimer yiyah, in a different passage it says yiyah, it should be, meaning even if it's different, it could be. Yochel yivchosh, you might think you can give less than 3 lugan. Talmud Loimer kacha. So for Gemara, we need a pasuk to say that you can give more than 3. For Gemara, ma Yosef, ilema arba v'shisha. Why would you a pasuk for that? What's the difference in 3? They're both roy l'karbonis. Ma'ishna shloisha the chazu l'keves arba v'chamish arba v'shisha nami chazi le'ayel upar. So why would I need a pasuk for it? The fact is the pasuk for it, it must be to tell me alav chamisha. Ushmamina ein kevel nesachim. Shmamina. You see from here that if you could be noidev 5, it's a raya ein kevel nesachim, because what are you going to do with 5? It doesn't fit a template. LOI, it must be that you'll use 4 for the actual nesachim, and 1 will be linadova. Gewaltig. Amar Ravashi. The problem is our Mishnah is a steer to this. Amar Ravashi v'anan loy t'nan hachi. We didn't learn that you can give 5. We learned you can't give 5. Ein misnadvin loy shnayim v'chamisha katani. Now you might think that chamisha is different than shnayim, and chamisha means lechatchila you shouldn't, but if you did, then it's good, and you'll just do 1 l'nadava. Maybe just lechatchila. Zok Gemara, it's not true because chamisha domi the shnayim. The Mishnah categorizes chamisha and shnayim as if they have the same issue, the same problem. Ma shnayim lo chazu klal. Shnayim you can't do anything with it because it's not. You got to be a minimum of 3. Av chamisha namid lo chazu klal. You can't use it at all. You can't say I'll use 4 and 1 will go to boisres. Zok Gemara mehechatayse mida ira hachadisa v'achadisa. Maybe shnayim means you shouldn't give it at all; it won't work at all. And chamisha don't lechatchila you shouldn't give. But about if you gave it, it would work, and you would be able to pour 4 as an nesachim, and the 1 would be used to supplement the different carbon. Gewaltig. Amar Abaye. Im tim tzaloimer ain't kevel in nesachim, then I don't have a shaila. Ha ain't kevel in nesachim. It works. It works. Im tim tzaloimer yesh kevel in nesachim, then I have a question. Now, before we get to the question, I just want to raise an interesting issue. If you give 5, right? You shouldn't. But if you gave 5, right? What do you do with it? 4 could be used by themselves because you have a template for them, and 1 will go to the Neder. So why can't I give 2 and it goes to the Neder? So Rashi says, and we learned it earlier in the Masechta, there's a rule.
He's not Mekayim his Neder then.
Well, he gave 2.
It's going in the Neder, you're saying.
So maybe that's what it is. Maybe that's what a Neder is. Maybe when he says 2, that's what he means.
Neder means there was Sibur, no?
But if he says 2, he obviously doesn't mean that it should be poured on the Mizbeach because it's not good for the Mizbeach. So maybe he means that he's giving it to Moshe. Zogt Rashi a very important rule. She'ein mafrishin tchila lemoishres. There's no such thing as lechatchila being mafrish to go straight into the moishres. If it can take on a carbon, it could become nesachim. So if you have extra, then it goes to moishres. But the lechatchila being makdish a carbon the moishres, that doesn't work. So Mamela, it's not negated by 2, it's only negated by 5, where you could have part of it at least could be part of the Neder. So Zokt,
still not.
Yeah, it's still a chatchila. That's correct. So Zokt Gemara, Zokt Abaye, Im Timsa Loimer Yesh Kevel in the Sacham. Let's say we held Yesh Kevel in the Sacham, so it wouldn't work. So Ad Asara Pshitali, up until from 6 to 10, we're fine. I'm sorry, from 3 to 10, besides 5, it's good because we said 3 is for a keves. 4 is for an ayil. 6 is for a par. 7 could be a combination ayil and keves. 8 could be 2 elim. 9 could be a par and a keves, right? And 10 could be a par and ayil. But what about 11? Acharot. So we already made a cheshbon about 11. What would 11 be? 11 would be 2 elim, 4 times 2 is 8, plus 1 keves. But the question is, the Gemara wants to know, maybe when a person gives an adova, when he's being noidiv, nesachim, maybe he'll have in mind to tap into 2 templates, but mahechatesi, maybe he won't tap into 3 templates, and maybe then you have to wait, if you hold if you hold yesh kevel nesachim, maybe you have to wait till you get another one, 12, and then you could have 2 pars, and then it's weiter, 2 templates. So that's the Gemara Shaila. Ara Sora Pshitali. If he was menadiv 11 loigin, that's my Shaila. Do you say Gavra Lishnei Parim Kamachavin? And if that's what his Kavana is, and we say that you need the whole Kvias, so then the Adam Amalalahu Loy Karvi, until he donates another one, so he can now have 2 parim, so it's 12. He has to wait. Oidilma, maybe Lishnei Elim Vekevas, Echod Kamachavin. Maybe he's thinking of a combination of 3 different Nesachim. Do you say Trei Mechad Mina, Vechad Mechad Mina Amrinon? Or maybe a person doesn't have such a kavanah when he's menadiv, Zogt Gemara Teku.
What do we ask about 3 mina?
Well, it's 3 templates. Well, a person combined 3 templates, 2 of one and 1 of the other.
2 of one, not 3, 1, 2, not 3 different ones.
Well, I'm cautious if he won't do 2 of one and 1 of the other, he for sure wouldn't do 3 different ones. So Rashi says, "Mi have urcha linduve eloi." The question really is, the das ha'adam, would he think of such a complicated structure, or maybe it's limited to 2? And the Gemara blibes with a teku. So the question is did he have kavanah to be menadiv in this fashion? Zok the heilige Mishnah weiter. Misnadvin yain. We know you could be noidiv yain by itself. You know why? Because what do you do with yain? In the real minchas nesachim, what do you do with it? You pour it down by itself. It's not combined with anything. You just pour it down. There's no kmitza done. You just pour it. But the English not vin shemen. You don't benad the shemen. First of all, because how can you do kmitza, right? Shemen you never find it gets poured on the mizbeach. Shemen is mixed with flour and you make a kmitza, right? But you can't do that if you give oil by itself. So therefore, there's no such thing as being menad of shemen by itself. Diver Rebbe Kiva. Misnad vin shemen. The question is going to be, if you're misnad of shemen, how in the world do you do a kmitza? So there's actually a discussion in the Achronim. I believe the Tosfos Yom Tov on the Mishnah says that you get it to gel, and once you get it to gel, then you could make a kmitza on it. The only thing I can think of is when little children, sometimes they'll play with their jello, and they'll put their hands into it. You see little kids that make a mess out of the jello, so it's something that you could do kmitza on. The Rashash says that there was a keli that would hold 2 kazezim, which would be the kaimitz. The problem that they ask on him is that we had a Gemara that learns from the Kamatz, says the Kamatz twice, that you're not allowed to make a keli the size of the kmitza. It has to be done with his hand. So there is a discussion about that, how you did the kmitza with oil.
How long does it take for it to gel? If it takes more than a week, then you got to.
I don't know how they would make it gel. I'm not sure how it works. I told over the Olam that I understand how you make things gel, because when I was in the mirror, there was an old mikveh before this Zvil built a beautiful building. This Zvil had a very small old building, and I used to go to the mikveh. And the mikveh had 2 unbelievable properties. First of all, the mikveh, I like the mikveh because they always had to keep it hot at a minimum of 110 degrees. Why? Because if they made it cooler, it would gel. And the other miraculous thing about the mikveh is you can go in bald completely, and when you come out, you would have a full head of hair. It was like a hair transplant center. So it was a gewaltige mikveh. Zog more weiter.
I lived in Zil. We were in Zil, in that building.
It was back to back with my dorm, which was right near the mirror, on Rechov Rappaport. Amar Rab Tarfon, Mama Tzinu biyayin, Shuba Chayva ubanadova. You see yayin karab's chayva. There's a template, and therefore it can be banadova. So shemen, av shemen, Shuba Chayva banadova. So it should be able to come banadova. Amal Rabbi Akiva, no, there's a big difference. Lo yimamrit biyayin shekein karv im chayvasa b'fnei atzmai. Yes, it comes chayva, but when it comes chayva, you pour it on the mizbeach by itself, not combined with anything else. Timer b'shemen she'enei karv im chayvasa b'fnei atzmai. Yes, there's a template for it, but the template is mixed with flour, so you can give a minchas nesachim, but you can't give oil by itself. Period. Now we have a new halacha.
We said before that you can go to Ladova, so let this go to Ladova.
But once again, you're not makdash something lechatchila l'nedava. So you could only be makdash something if at least the core of it will be able to be nesachim for zechalin.
Or just we make him give an extra leg, make him give a flour.
Maybe do you force him to give flour with it? If he says shemen, I mean, it seems like not. Ein shnayim misnadvin isarin echad. Two people are not misnad the one isarin, meaning a mincha cannot be brought by partners. It's a single carbon. Aval misnadvin oila ushalomim v'oif afilu preda achas. Even if they're bringing one bird, you can have shut. So Reb Moshe Weinberg asked me the following shaila. If you hold like Reb Tarfon that you could be misnad of shemen, why didn't the Mishnah, at least according to Reb Tarfon, elaborate just like it elaborated with yayin? What would be the minimum oil? Right? So he asked me that. So I said I don't know the answer. That's a very good question.
What's the shear of shemen?
I'm not sure how much. I think there's a loik shemen. I think the minimum is a loik shemen that goes into a mincha.
Every.
Unless by the chavitin they split it up as a half a loik and a half a loik.
Yeah, so
shemen, or was a loik in each one? I don't know, but whatever it was, the Mishnah should at least discuss how much it would be if you could do a loik by itself. And he asked why didn't it? But it's very possible that since we pass on like Rabbi Kiva, the Mishnah didn't get into it. But that was his horror. Zok the Gemara weiter. Amar Rava. Midivrish name nilmoid. Whether you hold like Rabbi Kiva or whether you hold like Rabbi Tarfon, one thing you know for sure. Together with flour, kula alma moida, you would be able to make a nedava. So misnad of adon minchas nesachim b'chol yom. Fact Gemara, why is that such a big chiddush? Why not? We find that there's such a thing in chayva. So whatever is in chayva, you could follow that template and you could be makdash et nedava. Pshita. Zokt Gemara, by mincha, I might say it's different. Because there's a whole parasha in the Torah that describes what type of menachos are available. And the Torah lays out clearly, if you want to bring a mincha, there are 5 templates. You can either bring a machvas, or marcheshes, or minchat soilas, or mafei tanur, which is 2 rikikin achales. So we bought the Torah, went through the length to explain the different options, and a minchas nesachim is not one of those options. So you might think, Mauditim and Michas Nedava, Goli Barachmona, Hani Chamisha Menachos in Tfeloi, Kamash Malon, Hani Midibistama. If you said Areli Mincha, you're being Mecharis of one of the 5 Menachos that the Torah says is Michas Nedava. I will like the parish, but if you said the Farish, I want to bring a Minchas Nesachim, parish. So my question is, and it's an Amaratis question, what is the difference between a Minchas Soilas and a Minchas Nesachim? So I know the Minchas Nesachim, there was no Kmitza done. The whole thing was put on. No. We're talking about the flour part. The whole thing was put on the Mizrach. There's no Kmitza. But the question is, was there any other chiluk? Was there a difference in how much was used? Or the Minchas Soilas? Did it ever get baked? Or the Minchas Soilas, they put the raw Soilas on the Mizrach?
Baked with what? It's just Soilas, can't bake it.
No, it's the Soilas has Shemen in it. It's Soilas and Shemen. And there's even a tzad, there's even a tzad in the Rishonim that you mixed it with water. So I'm not sure. I'm not sure that I have clarity in what is the actual difference between the minchas nesachim. So Rashi says,
did they bake it?
That maybe they did, because here it says Rashi says, what is the minchas nesachim? Soilas shemin v'yayin. It's soilas shemin v'yayin below carbon b'chol yoyim. The akal pligi if that's a b'mu'ur v'mamincha loy pligi. Oh, so maybe it's the minchas nesachim is a combination of soilas shem and v'yayin. Let me look up the pasuk to see what was done with the minchas soilas. Well, maybe the minchas was baked.
You didn't put the yayin in it. You put the yayin.
No, but it's part of the package. So let's look up in Vayikra. Let's look up in Vayikra what the mincha was. We're finishing Menachos, and I don't even know what a mincha is. So it says over here, this sounds like it's raw. right?
Say the puzzle, what?
It says v'kamat misham v'loy kumtay misolto mishamna. So it was raw. So I'm not sure what unless the difference is there's yayin and there's a kaimet and over there's no kaimets. V'kamat misham v'makam shrak v'hamizim. Yeah, it wasn't baked. So the minchas nesachim, you know how much is it? It's an isar and silas, right? It's an isar and silas and a loik shemen. The minchas nesachim, I'm not sure what it was. Let's look it up. It's by the pasuk of Ezra. Let's look up to see what the shiurim were for the minchas nesachim. It's Bamidbar Tesvav Yud Gimel. So let's see. Bamidbar Tesvav Yud Gimel. I should have had this prepared before. I apologize, but I'm also getting clarity as I'm learning it. Bamidbar Tesvav is where it talks about nesachim. This is a Mishay v'hikra v'makav karbonoi mincha soiles isarin bolul b'revius ahin shaman. So a revius ahin is 3 like, so it's a different shear. And v'yayin let's revius ahin, and you just put it on the mizbech. So that's the difference. The difference is it had wine, and it had the minimum was 3 like, right? But by a regular mincha soiles, I think one like was enough. Right, there was 1 like. So those are, I guess, those are the differences. Okay, Zok the Heilige Gemara weiter. Ein Shnayim Misnadin. You can't have a partner in the mincha. My timer, what's the reason? I'm sorry, takriv by mincha. I apologize, takriv, comma. It says takriv lashon yachid by the mincha. Oila nami yaksiv yakriv. It uses a lashon yachid by the oila, and we know by an oila you could have partners. Ella oila my timer. Why by the oila do we know that multiple people can chip in for an oila? Speaking to a rabbin. So we're back to square one. Ella mishum dechsiv bo nefesh. Nefesh means 1 nefesh, and therefore it's only 1. Tanya namihachi Rabbi Omer asher Yaakov karbanoi l'chol nidreim l'chol nedvoisam, which is mashma multiple people can come together b'shutfis to bring a carbon. Asher yakriv Hashem again Hashem Rabbim hakoil boin b'shutfis loy silik akasav ela mincha. The only carbon that the Torah excluded from the rule of hakoil b'shutfis is the mincha shenemar nefesh. Why take it? Does it say nefesh by mincha? Rashi Tosfos explains. It could have said ish. The imishum dein ba b'shutvis have a little of ish. Or loshen acher the mashma yachadavka. What's up is a loshen nefesh. He's given his soul. Amar kadosh baruch hu midakei lahavi mincha. Who brings the mincha? An ani. For an ani giving the mincha is mamish a git and neshama. Maila ani olav ki ilu hikriv nafshoy lefanai. Amar Rabbi Yitzchak, man nishtamis mincha shenemer ba chamisha minei tigun halalu. What's up is there's 5 options and they all have oil because they're not all fried. But Tosha says they all have oil. That's why they're called minei tigun. Moshe lemelech b'asar v'dam. She'asa lehavai suda. His friend who was an ani ve'avyoin invited the king for dinner. He knew the guy was an ani. So he didn't want the guy to make him a thick tomahawk steak. He knows that he doesn't have money for it. So what did he do? He was very smart. He said, is it all right if I make an order and I'll tell you what I'd like you to make for me? Because I have a geschmack in it. So the guy said, sure. And he said, I hope it's not too expensive. I hope it's not too expensive. And the king says, you know what I love? I love pancakes. Make me pancakes. So the guy says, oh, gewaltig, I'd love to make you pancakes. Now he feels mamish good because he sees, what I wanted to give and I'm able to afford to give, that's what the king wants. So that's mamish geschmack. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu Pasha wants to make the only feel good. Amar lo yasei li min chamisha minin minei tigun kadei she'ani mimcha. You don't have a no, that's what I want. So he made an order that he knew would be easy on the noitiv. Kavalti. So the Welt they ask, what's more expensive, a bird or flour from mincha? The Rishonim tell us that the flour for the mincha is much more expensive than the bird. So what's pshat? So I saw, we learned it earlier in the Masechta, the Masechta brings down from somebody, of Gavaltika word. He said, true, the bird is cheaper, but the ani has access to flour. Why? He gets leket, shik chompeya. So he has access to flour. So Mamela, he brings a mincha. So you might ask, if he has access to flour, so let him sell it, and then he can buy a bird. When there's a soicher, well, to this kaven kanani. That it doesn't say. That was my chiddush. Zog the Gemara weiter. Zog the Heilige Mishnah. Oh, Bli Neder, we were zoiche to finish the 12th parak. Bli Neder hadden lach hamenachos van the sachim. Bli Neder hadden lach hamenachos van the sachim. Bli Neder hadden lach hamenachos van the sachim. Be'ez Hashem, I believe that the last day of Mesechus Menachos is Erev Shabbos, which I believe is also Pesach Sheni.
Yeah.
And Shabbos, Be'ez Hashem, we're going to start Chulin. So it's not Bo Shabbos Bo Menucha, it's Bo Shabbos Bo Chulin. We have to roll up our sleeves. Okay, Gavalti.
Here was some with the thing. If it's not the right in his nefesh anymore. If he's going to sell it.
It's also not nefesh. The Masechta brings down also that when he gives an oif, he's not giving anything to be mahana other people, because the oif gets burned totally on the mizbech. An oif, but in mincha goes to the kohen. So Mamela, he wants to make Sefridin. It's his nefesh because he feels for Yener. He wants to help Yener. I didn't get clear what he said, but something ke'enzeh. Someone told me over from the Rashash. The Rashash said that. What did he say? Oh, I forgot. What he says. Okay, Yuvalti. Zog to Gemara weiter. Harei Allah Yisarin. Someone said Harei Allah Yisarin. Yavi Echad, he brings one mincha. The Gemara is going to ask Pshita. The Gemara is saying, you're right, it's Pashut, but it's a segue to the next halacha. Isroi nois, if he said Isroi nois, Yavi Shnaim, he has to bring two. The Gemara is going to ask Pshita. The Gemara is going to explain. What if he said Pirashti? I was makabel upon myself. I said Harei Allah, a certain amount of Isroinus, but I don't remember what I said. So he's in trouble. Then he did Mapirashi. The halacha is Yavi Shishim Yisar, and he has to bring 60. You know why? Because there's no way he could have done more than 60 in one mincha, because you can't do more than 60 in one mincha. So this whole parak talks about when someone says something and there's a suffix, how many menachos he has to bring due to him talking too much and not remembering what he said, which is really a vibish sugya. Because by kinim you always find a lady said this, lady said that, and every time she opens her mouth, it costs her husband another $500 in birds. It's not really a menidish psul. It's a vibish psul because they speak too much. So I could say it because my wife's not here. So I once said over. I'm the Purim Rav, so I once said over a joke, and I never saw Rabbi Lowy laugh so hard. It's like, of all the years that I said jokes, that was his favorite joke that I ever said. And what was the joke? It was right around COVID time, where everything was in lockdown, and the Bocher called his grandfather Erev Shabbos to wish him a good Shabbos. How long is such a phone call? 2 minutes, maybe 5 minutes if he says the part of the parsha. His grandfather started asking him nonsense questions: what's doing, how your cruises, the weather is so cold, how you managing. And the Inical was like, I have to go, like but his grandfather was showing knife and wouldn't let him. He was hacking him like a lady, every knowledge guy he was asking about. After about 45 minutes, the Zayda finally says, okay, I want to wish you a Shabbos. He says, you're probably wondering why I held you on the phone for so long. So he says, yeah, it was very unusual. So the Zayda says, because we're in COVID, I couldn't go to the mikveh in a long time. I wanted to at least be Yosy Tisha Kavim. Zog the Gemara weiter. Harei alai mincha. What if someone says Harei alai mincha? So he didn't say what type of mincha. There's 5 to select from. The halach is Yave Eizush Yirsa. Any type of mincha he could bring. Rabbi Yehuda, no. If he says Harei alai mincha stam, it's Yave minchas hasoilas. You bring a minchas hasoilas. You know why? Shehi miyuchedesh sheva menachos. It's the miyuched of the menachos. The Gemara is going to explain why is it miyuched. What if he said, I'll bring a mincha, oy min mincha, or a type of mincha? So the halach is yavi achas. He should bring 1 mincha. What if he said, I'm going to bring menachos, oy min menachos, or a type of menachos? There's yavi shtayim, because he said menachos. What if he said pirashti, I'm going to bring menachos, but ve'eni yadeya ezaman pirashi, I said I'm going to bring a specific mincha, machmas, marcheshes, but I don't remember which one I said. Yovi chamishton, he's got to bring all 5. What if he said, pirashti mincha shel asroinim? I said I'm going to bring a certain amount of asroinim, but ve'en yedea kama pirashti. But I don't know how many I said, which is a shtickle similar to the third case, pirashti ve'en yedea ma pirashti. And here, the Mishnah says the same thing, Yavi Shishim Yisar. You got to bring 60, just like the Mishnah says earlier. But Rabbi argues over here. Rabbi Omer, Yavi Menachos Shel Asroinis Me'echad V'at Shishim. You have to bring Menachos of Asroinis from 1 to 60. So you need to bring a Mincha with 1, a Mincha with 2, a Mincha with 3, up until 60. We're going to need to understand why. So the Pashat of Pshat is, and we're going to see in the Gemara a little bit more clarity, is because when someone donates a Mincha, what he means is it's going to be in 1 keli. So let's say he said 5. Let's say he said 5 Yisroinis, right? And you now put 60 in because of the suffix, then you're going to have over here part of Chayva and part of Nedava. And he holds that you're not allowed to mix Chayva and Nedava in 1 keli. So therefore, you have to bring 60 different menachas and 60 kelim. Do you know how many that is altogether?
Yeah. How many altogether? You have to add up from 1 to 60.
So there's a formula for it. And actually, Tosfos explains where the formula comes from. So the formula is you take the total number, which is 60, you divide it by 2, and you get 30, and you multiply it by 61. So 30 times 61 is 1,800 and change. I think it's 1,830. I'll do 30 times 61. 30 times 61 equals 1,830. Where does that number come from? Where did that formula come from? It's very, very simple. Because you're meshadach. You're meshadach 60 with 1, and you get 61. You meshadach 59 with 2, right? If you add it all up, at the end of the day, you have 30 variations of 61.
Right.
Until you get to 30 and 31. So if you have 60 variations of 31, so then it's perfect. You divide it by 30, you divide it by 2. You have 30 variations of 61. Good. You have 30 variations of 61.
By 2 is that's how many combinations.
So you divide it by 2, that's how many combinations you have, and each one is 61. And you can do it with anything. You do it with Hadlakas Neirs. It's 1 through 8, right? So you say if you do 4 times 9, 9 times 4 is 36. That's how many Neirs there are, plus the HMOSM, right? So that's the formula. Okay, Gavaltik. We'll learn a little bit math over here. Practical more Pshita. Why do I need the Mishnah to tell me that if you say Arei Alai Yisarn, you're Chayiv in Yisarn? It's Pashut. Zok Gemara true, but Yisroinos Yavi Shtayim is Tzrichalei. The Chiddush is Shtayim. Practical more Hanami Pshita. He said Shtayim. He said Yisroinos. Zok Gemara no. The Chiddush is Miut Yisroinos Shtayim is Tzrichalei. Maybe when I said Yisroinos, maybe I mean 6. Who's that? I mean 2. The Chiddush of the Mishnah is when someone says plural, he means 2. Zog the Gemara weiter. Pirashti en yedem ha pirashti yavi shishim isarin. That's the first case in the Mishnah. Mantana, who is the Tana of the Reisha? Amar Chizkiya the Loika Rebbe. Because in the Seifa, about virtually the same case, Rebbe said you can't bring 1 with 60, you got to bring 60 menachos, 1830 menachos. The Rebbe Amar yavi menachos shal asroinos me'echad v'at But Rabbi Yochanan says no. It's 2 different cases, and in the Reisha, Rabbi Yochanan Amar Afilu Tema Rebbe, he would be moided in the Reisha that you bring 60. You only have to bring 60 menachos. Why? Because the Reisha is speaking where he said Pirashti Isroinos Avoloi Kavatim Bechli. Standard when the guy says I'm a Kabbalah Mincha, he means I want it all to be in 1 keli. If it all has to be in 1 keli, then you can't just bring 60 in 1 keli because that's 60. Because you can't mix the dava with chayva. So you'd have to bring individual menachos, and the mincha that he was makabel of chayva, whichever one it is, let's say it's 6. That's his chayva, and the rest are all nedava. But the nedava and the chayva aren't mixed into the same keli. So if he spoke out that I wasn't chayva on 1 keli, so then what he could do is you still can't mix chayva with nedava, but the maisi sheet in the sroino is b'shit money. He could bring 60 individual menachos, because when he was machayim himself 5, he never said it has to be 1 keli, 5, but it could be brought in individual keli. So Mamela, he only has to bring 60, and however many was his chayiv, and the rest of nedava.
You can't combine menachos, but you can
divide menachos. Within 1 mincha, you can't have half nedava, half chayva. But if you bring multiple menachos, you can say if whatever I said chayva, that's how I want to be chayva, and the rest should be nedava. Harei alai mincha yovi ezer sheyirtza. And Rabbi Yehuda says, no, it has to be dafka mincha soilas. Vos tabes mincha soilas. Zok the Brayse, Tana hoilu pasach boy akos of tchila. When the Torah introduces the parsha of Menachos, we just looked it up. The first mincha that discusses mincha soilas. In fact, the more, so you tell me whenever you say a carbon stam, you're automatically referring to the first one that the Torah talks about. In the parsha of Oila, you know what the first type of carbon the Torah discusses? Minabakar. So you tell me if there the stam Yavi ben Bakar, Hoylu Pasach Boy Akos of Tchila, and even by tzayin, it breaks it up in the parsha of Vayikra. It first talks about a keves and then the ace. So if Tchila minat tzayin, you're going to tell me Yavi Kez. If it said minat tzayin, Tchila is going back on before, right? Because it mentions a Bakar Tchila. If he said minat tzayin, Yavi keves, Hoylu Pasach Boy Akos of Tchila. And mina oif. If you said mina oif, you have Torah because it always says Torah and then b'nei yoda. It's not true. Alama tanan. Why did we learn ishtazai? Harei yovi keves. Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah Omer Torah ben yoina. V'loy palak Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yehuda should have argued if he holds you always bring the first thing that's mentioned in the Torah. He doesn't argue. So vice versa, he holds you don't dafka bring the first one that's mentioned in the Torah. So we have shver. Why did Rabbi Yehuda say stam mincha is mincha soilas? Elamai miyuchedes shebemenachos that Rabbi Yehuda meant is the Leslie Shem Levi. It doesn't have a nickname. It's just called a mincha. A minchas marcheshes is called a minchas marcheshes. A minchas machmas is called a minchas machmas. A minchas mafetaner is called a minchas mafetaner. But a minchas soilas is just called a mincha. Correct Gemara, but that's not what the Brayse said. For Tana hoylu pasach because of tchila kamer. Right? The Brayse says it's because it was mentioned first. Zok to Gemara. This is what Rabbi Yehuda means in that brayse. Which mincha doesn't have a separate name to it? Frankly, Gemara, that doesn't make any sense. Rabbi Yehuda already identified what he's talking about. He's talking about the mincha soilas. So what does he have to give up? That's a remez, a hint of what he's talking about. He said Alfen Grub. I'm referring to mincha soilas. Pshita minchas hasoilas kamar. So tomorrow is Simna Ba'alma. Maybe Rabbi Yehuda wanted to make sure you would remember which mincha is he referring to when he says mincha stam. So he's referring to the mincha soilos. Why? Because it doesn't have a Shem Levi. But the way you could remember it is he told you it's the first one. So as a Telzer would say, it's a simin, it's not a siba. Gewaltig. Baruch Hashem, we are going to finish Daf Kuf Daled, and tomorrow we're going to learn Daf Kuf Hey with the Geschmack.
Very
Geschmack a blot.
nice, yeah.